Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sound Design September. Today is day 18 and we're going to be taking a look at some more atonal sounds. You know that's a really cool sound, right? Oh, thanks. Can I continue now with the tutorial? Now, as you can probably already imagine, for this kind of atonal stuff, we're doing something inside of Serum, and you can see the sine waves and 16 voices of unison and a lot of detune here as well. This is kind of your classical setup that suggests that something is happening on the global tab, and if we look over there, we can see that there's indeed something happening. In this case, though, you can see that the range is much less than we otherwise would do for other types of sounds that use this technique. What we would do is we would set this all the way up to 48 semitones, so then you get some really atonal stuff. But in this case, we want it to be a little bit more focused, so we just keep it to a range of 1 octave. And now, as you can imagine, what we're actually doing is we're generating a quite narrow range of frequencies here. And we can actually position that narrow range of frequencies inside of the spectrum by modulating the pitch. So that is exactly what we're doing over here. You can see that we have one modulation on the coarse pitch here with the note on random, and then as well another one on the detune. This is just so that that narrow frequency range that we're generating just kind of slightly moves up and down in terms of the actual range. So you can see that's happening over here, and we're just modulating the detune there. Other than that, on this page, we have a little bit of release, as well as a pitch bend going up and down. That is where we get that sliding effect from. And if you want to remove that sliding effect, it is as easy as going down here. And now you get a much more stable sound. So that is also a cool idea. And then in terms of the effects, it is actually rather easy. We have hyperdimension for some stereo width together with this chorus. Now the chorus is set up in such a way that the high frequencies are a little bit extended. The way that you do that is through the feedback and the depth. If you set both of them to a reasonably high amount, you get this nice extension, but you can't overdo this. So if you get them too high, it's going to kind of bleed into each other and it's going to become one washed out sound, which might be something that you could use in a breakdown or where you want a little bit of a lower energy. But for the higher energy parts of your track, you probably want every note to be a little bit more staccato. So that is also the reason when we're triggering this sound that we only use a gate of 23%. And in this case, the MIDI is as simple as just playing one note. You can see no other notes are being triggered here. This note is in the key of D sharp 3. Which, as you can imagine, is what happens with the atonal stuff, where the key of the sound isn't really there to determine the texture, but more the central point of the modulations that you're applying to the pitch and the detuning. So if I quickly switch around the arpeggiator and the pitch, you can hear what different tonalities we get out of that. You can hear for higher pitches we get more high frequency material. And I think I didn't go over the final bit of the processing, but you can see that it's fairly basic. The only interesting thing is that we're using 1/4 dotted instead of 1/8 dotted here. That is just to switch it up a little bit. You don't want all of your synths to use the exact same delay timing most of the time. And of course, these kind of sounds are also interesting without a delay, which is something that I actually want to cover in a video right after Sound Design September. You can hear you get a much more direct sound and we don't get that ambience from it. What you also see is that there's no reverb in the processing, and that is because we're already washing it out enough with the hyperdimension as well as the chorus. And with these kind of sounds, generally speaking, you don't want to wash it out too much, because then you really start to lose the actual atonality of the sound as you kind of pile on the noise of the reverb and all of the other effects on top of it. So again, we can make something like this also in Vital. So let's do that. We again are going to use just basic sine waves over here. Let's add a few voices to it. And now let's set the detune range to 12 voices over here. Let's try to set that exact. Of course, we have to set this all the way up. And now again, we can modulate this part over here as well to get some interesting sounds out of that. And if we want, we can also set up a slightly different randomization over here. So let's set this to 50%. And then I'm going to set this to sample and hold and freeze by dragging it all the way down. And then we can set this modulation here. Now quickly for triggering, we'll copy over the MIDI here, as well as the arpeggiator. And I'm going to move the pitch behind it like this, so that we can again change kind of the center of the modulation of the sound later. Of course, one of the things that we're missing is the modulation on the pitch here. So let's set up another randomness for that. We're going to do the same thing, sample and hold, and all the way down for freezing. And we just do something like this. If we want, we can steronize some of these as well. We can make a patch like this also more interesting by using a bandpass filter, either by having a global modulation that goes through it, or again by setting up something random. So again, sample and hold here. You can hear that we get some cool atonal bells out of that. In this case, I do want to get rid of the lower mid-range here. And in the essence of combining techniques, maybe something interesting that we can do is some filter FM with the phaser. Because the phaser, as you can see, just acts like this on the spectrum. What we can do is set the depth all the way down. And now we can modulate the sensor the way that we want to. So let's set this to key track over here. And then we're going to take the smoothness all the way off, and we can set this to the center here. So as you can hear, there's some really cool sounds that we're getting out of that. Now, if you don't want to make these patches from scratch, you can find them over on my Patreon page, which is an amazing way to support the channel. I do want to show you one more patch though, which is of course also going to be available up on my Patreon page. But I want to show you how you can use this kind of atonality in a slightly different way. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up basic shapes again. And because we can always modulate this amount, what we can essentially do is go from a setting where we have no detune whatsoever to a setting where it is basically just going to spread out over time, which is a really cool effect. So let's set up a few voices here, 16 to be precise, and then let's go detune range all the way up. And now all we have to do is set up a modulation like this. Let's set it maybe to 4 bars so that it's a little bit of a riser effect. And that is just going to tune them up as well as down over time. Which you can imagine is a little bit of a different riser than your traditional riser. Of course, if you want an overall rising effect, you can do that as well over here. Let's set this to maybe 24 modulation so that it goes up 2 octaves, which is exactly the same as the detune range over here, meaning that the lowest voice is basically going to stay steady because we're using the same modulation on both of them. And then all of the higher voices are going to progressively rise more and more. Now, of course, if you want to finish this, what you would do is something like this. For the volume, let's set this to also 4 bars. You can actually set this to 8 if you want to, and set both of these to envelope. This one was set to 8 as well. And then what we could do is add a nice long release stage. So something like this. This will be for the volume, which we'll set like this. No smoothing. And let's assign that. You can hear that it has a nice finishing off point if that is something that you want. Of course, we can add a delay here. A little bit of reverb would be nice, maybe removing some of the lower frequencies that we seem to get here. Of course, it is slightly too loud, so let's lower it a little bit. We can do some more cool stuff with the spectral stuff over here, or maybe with the distortion again. If we really want, we can also set up this distortion spread over here, so that gives more interesting effects. Of course, we seem to get a very noisy texture this way, so maybe that's not what we want exactly. But as you can imagine, you can experiment with this and tweak it however you want. So that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you did by leaving a like and make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Another way to support me is by watching some more of my content. So there will be 2 videos up on the screen for you to choose from. So just pick one and enjoy, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.